So we've already created a blueprint, and this blueprint we created is derived from the actor class. Now we're going to create a C++ class. So let's go over to our C++ classes folder and click the drop down and go into first project. Now we see there's already a C++ class here. This is a game mode, and more specifically, it's a game mode base class. This is automatically given to us in this project, and we'll learn later how to use the game mode and what types of functions and variables can be stored in there. But for now, we're going to create our own new C++ class. So go ahead and right click and click New C++ class, and we get this C++ class creation wizard. We can choose among any of these types of classes that we would like our class to derive from. We can also click up here where it says Show All Classes, and this will show an even wider selection of C++ classes that we can derive from. Go ahead and uncheck that and click on Character. We're going to create a class derived from the Character class. Go ahead and click Next, and we're going to give our character a name. Let's call this Main Character. And click Create Class. Unreal Engine is going to create the C++ files, and we're going to be able to open them in Visual Studio. As Visual Studio loads the files, you can see down here at this blue ribbon the progress it's making as it's loading. Once it's finished loading, it'll say Ready down here. Now we can see that Visual Studio has created two files for us. It has created a .h or a header file, and it's created a .cpp or a source file for our character. Go ahead and click on main character.h, and we'll see a few things here that the class creation wizard has generated for us. Notice these macros here. We have a uClass macro, a generated body macro, as well as this first project underscore API. We're going to learn a lot more about what these do in the following video, but for now, just take a look at our class definition. We have class A main character. Another thing you probably noticed is that our class was named main character in the class creation wizard. However, in Visual Studio, it automatically puts an A at the beginning. And this is because all classes that derive from actor have an A at the beginning automatically. In the public section, we have the main character constructor. In a protected section, we have a begin play function. It's virtual, and it's also an override. In public, we have a virtual tick function, and it's also an override. So these were virtual functions in a parent class somewhere up in the hierarchy of inheritance. The virtual void setup player input component is also an override, and this one takes an input parameter of type pointer to uInput component. Now let's take a look at this line here. We have a main character, and it's derived from a character. Again, a character has an A at the front because it is an actor. Remember, everything that is an actor and below in the inheritance hierarchy is also an actor. So we have an A to symbolize that. Now, if you aren't already familiar with some capabilities that Visual Studio has, we're going to go over a couple of things right now. Go ahead and hover over a character and right click, and you can see peak definition or go to definition. If you click peak definition, it'll open a nice little window here without bringing you out of the header file, and this shows you the definition of a character. Go ahead and close that and right click on a character again, and this time click go to definition. Now it takes us to a completely different file. It's taken us to the character.h header file. This is where the character class is declared. Right here on line 210 you see class a character, and it's a public pawn. This is how we know that character is derived from pawn. Now if you want, you can scroll down and look at all the code in the character header file. There's quite a bit already built into the character class. Now let's go ahead and right click on a pawn and click go to definition. Now here we have the pawn.h header file, And here on line 37, pawn is declared, and it's a public actor and a public iNav agent interface. So pawn has more than one parent. We're taking advantage of multiple inheritance here. And if we right click on a actor and click go to definition, you'll see the header file for the actor. Now, another thing you might notice is there are a lot of different comments in all of these files, and these are to help us as developers so that we can read these and get more information as we're browsing through. Now, we're not going to be browsing through much of the code in Unreal Engine just yet, not until we learn more about how these things work, but this is just to show you how you can search the definitions of various classes. Now look at actor and see that it's derived from UObject. Now UObject is the object class we discussed in the previous video. Instead of an A in front of the object name, we have U. So anything that you see in code that has a U in front of it is derived from UObject. But as soon as you derive something from actor, then you have an A in front of it. Right-click on UObject and go to definition. Now we see the definition for UObject, and we'll also notice that it is not the highest in the hierarchy. UObject is actually derived from something called UObject base utility. Right-click on that, click go to definition, and you'll see that UObject base utility is also derived from UObject base. We can keep doing this, and UObject base is at the top of the hierarchy. This is the very highest in this inheritance chain, and you're really not going to be creating any classes derived from UObject base. This is a very basic class in the hierarchy, and we're more interested in things like UObjects and A actors. So close that out and come back to our A main character, and we're going to go to main character.cpp. And you'll see that the class creation wizard has already created definitions for the constructor. We have a definition for begin play, tick, and setup player input component. And you'll also notice that begin play, tick, and setup player input component have these interesting lines in their bodies. We have super begin play. What super begin play does is it calls the parent version of begin play. So the parent to main character is a character. If we go back to the definition of a character, we can click somewhere in the editor and hit Control F for find, and we'll get this little find menu up here. If we click on that, highlight it, and type begin play, we'll see the declaration for begin play. It's virtual, and even in character, it's an override. So in our main character.cpp, when begin play is called, the parent version of begin play is also called in a character. You'll see this variable primary actor tick dot bCanEverTick equals true. If you hover over it, you'll see that it's of type uint8, which is an unsigned int of 8 byte size. We can treat these like booleans and give them values like true and false. So for our intents and purposes, we can refer to this as a bool. For this particular bool, whenever it's true, the character has ticking functionality, and when it's false, you save some resources because the tick function no longer works. So we actually have the capability to go to definitions of classes and functions in Visual Studio, and this is very powerful because we have access to the entire game engine, and we can delve into it once we've learned a bit more about it and learn just from looking at definitions of built-in classes in the Unreal Engine hierarchy.